So, hello. So, what a day of celebration for a couple reasons. But first of all, I'd like to thank Kim Char and Highest Good and everyone that stood in with them for keeping the vibrations high around here.
Yes!
I'd like to thank Enoch and his friends, Justin and Treya, for giving us days of love.
Yeah.
And I'd like to thank our Reverend duo, Michael and Mary Beth Spear, for reminding us how to apply spiritual principles in our day. And now we'd like to welcome back Reverend Kitty.
Thank you.
So we've all signed a special card for you. And we have a little something for you.
Oh my gosh, you guys! Not one, but two. Double the blessings, you guys. This is beautiful. Thank you so much. It's my joy to be back here. I felt you every single Sunday, all week long. I knew you were having a great time together. I was grateful for your willingness to continue on your path, and just deeply grateful to have your love in my life. Thank you for letting me be here with you. Beautiful. Gorgeous. You can be seated. Unless you want to come up here and do this with me. Did you have a good summer? It's hard to believe that it's almost the end of August. Next weekend is, I think, Labor Day weekend, right? Yeah, wow, that came fast. I hope that you found ways to thrive. Remember that this year we chose at the beginning of the year, 2025. We wanted to thrive in 25. Remember that? Yeah, so hopefully you've been finding some ways to do that. And Lord knows there's always lots of ways to get in the way of thriving. You know, one of the most common ways that we can do that, we can block the flow. Even though it's everywhere present, it's always available to us, we can block the flow when we get into that energy of resistance. Sound familiar? I don't imagine there was anything for this crowd that you resisted this summer. Anything? No, of course. You're right up there at the top. So when we talked about thriving in 25, we remembered that we had chosen a value of what? To remind us how to thrive. What was our value? Up on the wall. Open-mindedness, one of our values that helps us get back to the flow. And I thought maybe it'd be time for a refresher on that. We've talked a lot about the flow over this year, and I just want you to keep opening your heart to new possibilities. That's the way the flow gets to move through us, is to keep opening your heart. When we chose open-mindedness as a value, we had a definition for it, but I wanted to know what you guys thought about open-mindedness. So we put this banner up on the wall, and I asked you to just post things and write things that reminded you of open-mindedness. Candace is sitting over there with a microphone. If we could have that turned on, just read a few of those to us. What do we say about open-mindedness? Is your button on? Does it look like green? Okay. If it is to be, it is up to me.
A little bit of this one. Open-minded doesn't mean that you're putting your own thoughts and beliefs aside. But rather, okay, I'm going to start over. Open-minded doesn't mean that you are putting your own thoughts and beliefs to the side, but rather being able to listen to someone without judgment, criticism, or pushing your own perspectives on them.
Wow, awesome. Thank you, Candace. And you know what? I went online this week on Facebook, for those of you who have friended me. I asked you to tell me what you thought open-mindedness was. And some of the responses, they all started to meld together. But up here on the screen, somebody said the ability to listen and really hear others without judgment. Doesn't mean I have to agree with them. Right? Would you agree with that? Oh, you can still be open-minded without having to agree. Being curious and willing to see a different point of view. Being willing to change my mind. How many of you have practiced any form of open-mindedness this summer? I'm going to want you to pay attention over the next few weeks to keep practicing, and then I'm going to ask you to come back and share. Maybe come up here on the stage with me and just share one way that you practiced open-mindedness this week. So if you come up with one of those examples, email me, let me know in advance, and we'll make sure we have room for you up here. Also, when we defined open-mindedness as a value, we decided that it needed to be supported by our behavior. So up here on the screen, here's our behavior. I'm flexible when presented with new or uncomfortable ideas. Flexible, just feel into that word. I listen and consider the possibilities of different perspectives versus just the one that was born in me. And we're going to focus, as you listen to those, you might notice that they're mostly about relating to one another, being open-minded when we relate to one another. But we're going to get more to that in the next couple of weeks. Today, what I wanted to focus on is what I'm calling a higher version of open-mindedness. I'm calling it spiritual open-mindedness, which is, up here on the screen, I'm just saying it's when we allow our higher level of consciousness to make itself known, to raise our consciousness to the highest perspective, which means we're creating space in our awareness to hear from Spirit. And I would highly recommend that we do that on purpose. I think that's what Paul was writing to the Romans about. He said, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. Renewing of our minds means learning how to think differently. And he said, the reason is so you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Think of that whole scripture as about staying in spiritual open-mindedness. Think about that. You know, some of the definitions that you put on Facebook actually related to me to this spiritual open-mindedness. So I grabbed those up here on the screen. Somebody said, comfortably dwelling in the space of not knowing. Notice the word comfortably dwelling. Why is that important for spiritual open-mindedness? Because if you can admit from the beginning, I don't always know, and that's okay, because I'm one with the divine mind, and that spirit mind knows. So I can relax, I can breathe, but if I don't just relax a little bit and open up to it, it's not going to be able to come through. Someone else said understanding and accepting other perspectives, or accepting that other perspectives can exist. I mean, how many times do we just move through life and think there's only one perspective and it's mine? Right? But what if we just once in a while said, you know, there could be something better, higher, more useful, more effective than what I'm used to. Let me just open up to Spirit and see if I can't tap into that. Someone else said, reimagine possibilities and be open to flow. I love the word imagine, and reimagine is even more fun because it really gets the creative juices flowing. Where do those creative juices come from? Spirit. And so if we want to be creative, we have to open up to the source of that creativity. And that's playing with pictures in our mind, just letting them float in and out until something resonates with us. That's how we get to open-mindedness. And finally, when we were defining open-mindedness as a value, we came up with a rationale. This is why we choose open-mindedness, up here on the screen. It supports our spiritual growth toward our experience of wholeness. It allows us to explore and consider new ideas, Here it is. It enables the Christ within to express more fully. When we are focused on spiritual open-mindedness, that is the doorway for that Christ within, that infinite mind, to make itself known in us. I have been walking a path of, I would like to think, spiritual open-mindedness pretty much since I was awake and aware and able to make choices. I was raised in a very moderate, Protestant, there it is, another P word, Protestant church, following my parents' generation and their parents' generation and their parents' generation. I learned the basics of Christianity, and it became rote to me. I didn't have to think twice about what I believed. But somewhere along in my teen years, I started wanting more emotion. And I wanted to feel my connection to spirit. And just through asking questions of friends and people not part of my church, I discovered there was another view, believe it or not, to experience God. And it was called the Pentecostal movement, charismatic movement. In one particular church I ended up attending, they called it the full gospel. Not just the part gospel, the full gospel church. And he literally said it that way. It was kind of bizarre. But the way that the feelings expressed and connection to heart was about speaking in tongues and laying hands on the sick and prophesying. Oh, and then there were the holy rollers. Did you know that holy rollers got their name because they literally roll on the ground? They're so overtaken by spirit that they're either rolling or they're running up and down the aisles. I never got quite that far, but I witnessed it. I could see it. And there came a point, as I lived in that for probably about 10 years or so, I started to feel that the dominant energy was judgment and fear. And it just didn't resonate with my understanding of spirit, my connection to spirit. And so I began opening my mind again to see what else spirit wanted to do or express through me. And lo and behold, I found my way to a Unity church. And I think what captured my attention there, besides the fact that it was a way to experience practical Christianity, because I'm a major practical person in life. If there is no reason to tell me, if you're talking to me and it doesn't have a, so how does this affect me and what am I supposed to do with this? I'm not interested. Most of the time. And so it was referred to as practical Christianity, and the more that I studied it, the more I opened my mind to the connection between science and religion, between spirit and the physical me, between heaven and earth. It was kind of the transcendentalists that got us here to this point in Unity, but the point is that I started to see not God as separate from me, but God as all that is, that I live and move and have my being. And it was right there in Scripture for me, if I just looked, that I live and move and have my being in this presence of God. So that has played itself out in me in many different ways of experiencing and opening my heart to the divine. I was always intrigued by those who found a way to bring that oneness with God, not only into their awareness, but out in their sharing. And I came across this first when I lived at 421 East Embert Street in Peoria, Illinois. A little tiny ranch house with 3 bedrooms and 7 people living in it. I was one of 5 kids. And my dad at the time was a book buyer, one of his jobs, a book buyer for, it was called Block and Cool, and then it became Carson Peary Scott. Anybody know that store? Okay. So he had a shelf that lined the walls of our living room, filled with books. And I started getting interested in them, and at one point I picked one up called There is a River. Anybody know that book? All right. Edgar Cayce. So I was probably 10, 11, 12, and I'm opening up and I'm reading about this guy who was going into a trance, I guess, or maybe falling asleep, and then he would begin to share. He would open his mind to spirit, and he would begin to share ideas coming from spirit. And I thought, wow, that is really cool. And I had been intrigued with that then for the rest of my life, coming across people who had the ability to be intuitive or psychic, you might call, or a medium where they're able to open their mind to spiritual friends on the other side and reconnect. And so this summer, I had the opportunity to have a session similar to that with Michelle Claire. Who knows who that is? Y'all better be raising your hand because she's going to be here on Saturday. Michelle Claire is an intuitive. She's had 3 near-death experiences. And in the process of leaving the body and moving into the spiritual dimension and having total access to the divine mind, and then coming back into her body, she was able to retain that connection. So that today we consider her a psychic, a medium, an intuitive. And I wanted to connect with her before she came here on Saturday. So it turns out that in this connection, she immediately tapped into a connection with my parents, who are both on the other side. And she started describing our life together as a family growing up. And she said, Kitty, your parents are saying that you were kind of the wild card in the family. There were 5 kids, I was in the middle, and they see you as the wild card, and you were the one that always had to do it your way, and you were somebody who wanted to think big, think differently, think outside the box, free thinker. They're also saying that in contrast, and this is everything she said about this was so true, my parents were not. They were pretty much the opposite of me. It was by the book, it was follow the rules, it was stay in the lines, and they were saying that Kitty always wanted to push the line. Let's move the line, let's do something different, let's think again. They're here, they were born in 1929, so at that point they'd been raised in the Depression. It had affected their thinking. And so they did not like anybody coming along, especially their little smart aleck kids, saying, move the line, let's try something different. They wanted to keep it safe. They wanted to keep it with what they knew. They didn't want to question authority. And then there was me, who was constantly, I stood in the corner more times than I can remember for mouthing off and always having a better idea. And as I went through in my late teens, remember that time where I wanted to start feeling God more? I started speaking in tongues and having dreams, and I was trying to tell my mom all about it. She was taking me to work one day. It's so funny. She's driving me to work, but I'm telling her how to think. And I'm telling her, that this is full gospel, Mom. You need to get into the full gospel. Well, she had a hard time with that, and that was okay. And what I discovered as time went by is that I did not need them to think like me. I was okay with them thinking however it was that they were thinking. And what I've learned is that we can open our mind to spirit and run into different things. Do you understand that? Because if each one of us are a unique expression of the divine, and the divine is here to express uniquely, of course it's going to resonate with different ideas that don't match everybody else's, and that's okay. I want you to just let that sink in here for a minute. That it's actually normal, it should be expected that we have different ideas about things. And when I talk about being open-minded and letting everybody else think what they want to think, I'm not talking about breaking the law and letting that be okay. I'm talking about perspectives and opinions and things that we like and things that we don't like. Everybody not only has the right to their own divine ideas, but you're really here to find your own divine ideas and live them, to open your mind to spirit and see what spirit has specifically for you. And as you can see, at some point, you're going to bump into other people who think like you, hence you're all sitting here this morning. Now, I can't say that you all think like each other across the board, but something brought you here to hear this kind of explanation of spiritual principles that resonate with you. So, great, that's wonderful. And I want you to just go back in time here for a minute and ask yourself, how did I get here? First of all, is there anybody in the room who was actually raised as a child in a Unity church? Raise your hand. Anybody? Anybody? It's really rare when we find somebody. Okay, yeah, so I'm not seeing anybody. But a lot of times we just are born into a certain type of spiritual belief and we just follow it the rest of our life, right? Yeah, that was what my parents did. But some of us are born into a certain belief. How many of you came from a different spiritual belief than this one? Yeah, look, almost all of you. Is there anybody here who was not raised in a spiritual belief and this is kind of the first formal path that you're following? A few of you. Okay, wow. Congratulations on your courage and your willingness to try something new. To all of you that wound up in this room, that are watching right now online. And that's your job, is to keep testing and opening to Spirit and seeing where it's taking you and seeing what resonates for you. Now, unity, one of the most foundational things that we teach, we say here every week, one presence, only one presence, there's only one power. But we also say there are infinite paths to experience one presence and one power. And you are welcome to whichever one speaks to you. That's what makes unity a little bit different is, yes, we have a path. We don't teach all paths, but we recognize there are many paths to God, and you are welcome to find the one that speaks to you. The most important thing is you're turning towards Spirit in whatever way that you can find that. But you don't really get there unless you open your mind to the spiritual dimension, to spiritual truths. Start asking questions, start listening. When was the last time you really just said the word God or source or whatever your word is for all that is, and then just sat back and watched what comes up for you? Why don't you do that right now? Why don't you just close your eyes? And I'm going to say the words, and then I want you to just notice what naturally comes up as a relationship to the word God, or source, or spirit. Whatever that divine word is, what comes up for you? Anybody want to shout out what you're getting? Connection. Love, universe, light, source. Say it again. Garden. I love that. Ooh, here was something cool. Let me interject here for a minute. There was some big thing on Facebook this week about the Pope, and I don't know what the question was. That was kind of like, where are you right now? Or what's one word that you can share that you want the world to know? And did anybody hear what his word was? Many. Wow, how cool is that? Okay, what other words did you get? When you think about God, or whatever that word is. Anything else? Field. Everywhere. All that is. Power. Energy. Val? One. Yeah. What I'm going to ask you to do is keep doing that throughout the week. And first of all, whatever the word is or sentence that comes to you, I'd love if you would just take 5 minutes to meditate on it and see where it takes you. And also keep doing it and see if the word changes. This is how we open our mind to Spirit. And if we make the space in our consciousness, in quiet, in peace, in love, now we're opening a door for that highest consciousness to come through and lead us into whatever our next steps are. You know, I played with that idea this summer, opening my mind to Spirit with some new interests. And I would say it's easy when you think about wanting to incorporate Spirit into your life, to first go to your problems. How can I use God to fix this problem? Or what's going on in the world right now, and how can I touch on some kind of spiritual idea that will fix this problem? Can you relate to that? Is there anything going on in the world right now that needs any kind of spiritual attention? Maybe one or two things. So I decided, it turns out, I really didn't have much time in my life to do this until I had some time off in my sabbatical, where I went online and just started perusing podcasts. I'm not a big podcast follower, but it turns out there's about a zillion of them out there. And they're on all kinds of topics, and ones that were addressing problems could have come from a political point of view, all kinds of views that I wasn't interested in. I was more interested in listening to podcasts based on spiritual ideas, opening my mind to new spiritual ideas. Wow, holy cow, there's a lot. Some of the things that I ran into was, now, I'm not saying I buy into any of these, but I just want you to hear how many spiritual ideas there are. And the fact that they're out there, they're on a podcast, and some of them have hundreds of thousands of followers, means that they do resonate with some people, and that's okay, right? Right. Right? Okay, come on. Just want to make sure you heard me. All right, so for instance, one of the podcasts, not one, many podcasts were teaching on the idea that the human race is heading towards a major awakening. Ooh, that sounds exciting. I don't know what that means, but major awakening. Then there were podcasts that were trying to get us to say, this is just a dream you're having. This isn't really happening. There's no physical world. This is just all in your head. Okay, take a breath. All right, then the next one was, you're actually living multiple lives in parallel dimensions at the same time. Yeah, and let's see, how does it work? That you are flashing in and out of existence 1 billion times a second. And you can choose which body you're going to pop back into. Now. So if you don't like this body, then just pop in. I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can do that. All right, then there's the idea that open contact with aliens is coming soon. And then there is the thing that you think it's bad now, it's going to get even worse before it gets better. Okay, thanks for sharing that. Then there are those positive thoughts where they're saying that the world is actually going to move into an energy of compassion and health and abundance for everybody. Woohoo! Sounds like heaven on earth, right? Then there's the idea that our economy is going to switch from $1 to synchronicity, which is so complicated I can't even begin to figure out how I'm going to have my breakfast. I mean, where's my food going to come from? That's all I care about. And then there's, the most common to me, I've heard for years and years, as a matter of fact, I was one of the ones that was spouting this off, was Jesus was coming back tomorrow. That the end times are here, that the Antichrist is nearby, that the second coming is right around the corner, that some of you bad boys are going to be left behind, and Armageddon will follow. So, suck it up. All right, so lots and lots of ideas. What do you believe? What do you live by? What do you allow to guide you in your decisions and your choices? What is the truth? Now, I have to say that it's fun for me to listen to psychics and intuitives and mediums and channels. You've heard me say, hopefully, even teaching from like Esther Hicks material, Abraham Hicks, channeled material. I will tell you, first and foremost, listen to your own heart. Before we all just dive in and say, she's got it, listen to your own heart. What's your heart? Divine mind, Christ in you. The Spirit of God expressing as you knows it all. And while some may have tapped into that in the spiritual dimension and are sharing it with others, some may be wanting to, and it comes out in a weird way. So keep asking your heart, is this true for me? Keep checking in with what feels real to me. Now, one of the things that I do in order to stay balanced is I put my emphasis on learning spiritual principles first. Now, depending on what church or religion organization you follow, even spiritual principles can be up in the air. But I will tell you, I became a unity minister because these are the principles that speak to me. And as I continue to study those principles, I discover that they're not just in unity, that they're spread out across a whole bunch of different spiritual traditions, which, by the way, is how unity got its name unity, or one of the reasons. It's because it's a blending of the main spiritual principles that show up in a variety of spiritual traditions. So I think that's what Jesus was trying to say when he was teaching principles to those who are following him. Up here on the screen, he said, "Everyone then who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on rock. The rain fell, the floods came, the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall because it had been founded on rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain fell, the floods came, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall." The rock, building your house on rock, is to me building your house on spiritual principles of truth. And again, it's about discerning what truth is, right? What is eternal? When we talk about absolute truth, some may argue that there is such a thing. I would say, according to Unity's principles, absolute truth is that which is based on eternal source. In other words, it exists on its own. It doesn't depend, it's not relative to anything else for its existence. That would be what is eternal truth. So think about it, when we say one presence, we're talking about a presence that is all that is and doesn't depend on anything for its existence. You understand that? When we say one power, we're talking about a power that doesn't have to plug into Silco, or what's our place? What are we called here? ComEd. Sorry. Went back to my childhood there for a minute. All right. No, but it's about keep asking Spirit. Open your mind and your heart to Spirit. What is true? What is real? What is eternal that I can depend on? And I haven't reached the point in my life yet where I can predict the future. Not saying that won't ever happen. But what I do know without a shadow of a doubt is we all have free will. Do you agree with that? And what I mean by free will is you get to decide what to think and how to feel. Nobody else can do that for you. So no matter what's happening in your physical life, you still get to decide how to see it. To me, that is a fundamental principle that you want to lean into and realize no matter how it looks right now, appearance has no power over me unless I give it. So when I think about this, no matter what comes, as long as I keep my mind open to Spirit first, I'm always going to have the principles and the resources needed to be able to move through it. It's not going to matter who's in power. It's not going to matter what political party just won the last election. It's not going to matter whether there's aliens landing on the White House lawn. It's not going to matter whether religions are starting to fade away and there are no more religions. It's not going to matter whether we're speaking telepathy as our national or world language. None of that is going to matter, whether it happens or not. I'm just playing with you here. But you guys are awfully quiet, which means you're really taking this in. Okay, well, don't let it throw you. Come back to, what does Spirit say about this? What does my heart say about this? How am I being guided? And just take today, for heaven's sakes. Please don't plan and worry about the future. Seek first the kingdom, and all those things will be added to you. Does that make sense? So when we're talking about what is true and how to keep our mind open to Spirit, go back to that scripture from 2 Timothy up here on the screen. God did not give us a spirit of fear, but rather a spirit of power and of love and of a sound mind. Divine wisdom. So when you find yourself leaning towards worry, you get to open your mind to Spirit and come back to who you really are. Not a doubter, not a worrier, Any form of fear is purely human, purely ego. Our spirit never worries. Our spirit never fears. It's a spirit of power and of love and of wisdom. All the time, 24/7, that's who you are. Can you get to it? How do you get to it? Open your heart and mind to spirit. Invite it to show you what is real in this moment, what is mine to do, what is eternal here, what is unchanging. That's what's real. That's who I can lean into. So I'm not saying that our life is meant to be all sunshine and roses. I actually think, and I've said this I don't know how many hundreds of times, we came here for the struggle, for the problems that this physical dimension offers us. Whether it's real or not, whether it's a dream or it's actually happening to us, my understanding is the reality of spirit is the true power. And that we can have an experience here that is of joy. I taught a book, just barely scratched the surface of it, A Walk in the Physical. Anybody here remember that one from class? All right. So Christian Sundberg, somebody who opened his mind to spirit and suddenly had memories of being outside the body before he got here. And therefore, having memories of how this all works, how the spiritual dimension works and how it intertwines here in the physical. And he wrote an entire book about it that I think is lots of fun. And one of the things he says up here on the screen is, from the perspective of immortal, invincible spirit, which is what you are, the opportunity to experience such a messy, tough environment is a treasure. The decision to engage in such an experience is not done out of seriousness, but rather out of incredible excitement and joy. Imagine you came in here with excitement and joy to beat your head against the wall. Because you knew after a few times of bruising your forehead, you were going to go, you know what, that's not working. Maybe I could open up to spirit and see how I can transform this experience. Wouldn't that be fun? Every one of us knew the challenge we signed up for before we came. So no more pointing the finger at it's their fault. I came here and I knew who I was, and I knew that the who I was unique and an expression of the divine, and that all things are possible. There's infinite potential in me. And this is a fun playground. If, no matter what is going on in our world right now at this moment, we could look at this as a fun playground, we're going to talk more about how to do that as we open our mind in various ways in the next few weeks. But that would take the edge off right away of fear. It would put it back in true perspective of why we came here and what we want to experience. And return our power back to us, the one power that wants to express through us. So, open-minded to spirit comes with tools and everything that we might need to be able to do this. I put a list of words up here on the screen for you because I think that if you chose any one of these words and meditated on one and just asked yourself, how does that help me open my mind to spirit? It could guide you towards what's possible. So when you feel like all your good is closed off to you, just meditate on the word open. I am open to spirit. There's that word accept that many of us hate, but it's literally another word for love, is to accept what is, that can't be changed. That's one of our first steps towards non-resistant. So just meditate on that. I'm just going to breathe and accept what is, opening my mind to spirit and to see what else there is. Okay? So any one of these words might speak to you. See which one does. Maybe we'll do a few of them during meditation. And keep opening up to that which is more infinite and possible in nature, because spirit is your resource, is your source, All things are possible. You know, when I was putting notes together for this week, I kept abbreviating open-mindedness with OM. So my notes were covered with OM, 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 and I thought, oh, that's cool. Yeah. So, first of all, open-mindedness, what if the abbreviation for that OM is like the Hindu word Om, which is really the word for absolute infinite potential. When we're open-minded, we're open to absolute infinite potential. Same thing as the word Om. And another thing about the word Om is that it can be used as a chant to open your crown chakra. And when you chant Om to open your crown chakra, you're seeking to align to oneness, to unity, which always is, but we're rarely awake to it. So chanting Om is about opening and connecting to spirit through our crown chakra, that spiritual energy center specifically for knowing I am one with the divine. I am in unity with all that is. So, summarizing, is it possible that open-mindedness opens the door to all potential and our unity with God? My hunch is if we practice it enough, we will see that it does. Let's take some of these words into meditation and see how we might open our mind to spirit. Just invite you to open your mind to your body. And notice if there's any form of tension in it. And now open your mind to the life energy that is also in your body. I open my mind to life. Wholeness. My mind and body are one with the vitality, renewal, and life of the divine. Notice if there's a story going through your life right now that feels broken or limited or confusing or scary. Notice how it feels in your body when you think about it. Open your mind to higher possibilities. I raise my thoughts to the one presence, the truth of my reality. I open my mind to infinite potential. to a realm of divine ideas. I am willing to raise my thoughts to that which is power and love and wisdom. And as my human longs to evolve and create, but feels limited, I open my mind and my heart allowing my divine imagination to unfold. I make room in my thoughts for pure silence. And wait on the highest and best Spirit has for me. I am receptive. I am willing. I am hopeful. For the source that is all that is my source. There are no limits. There is no judgment. I open my mind and heart to yes, to thank you, to enthusiasm, this is my path and my potential, and I joyfully allow it to unfold before my feet. One presence and one power, living freely and fully as me. And so it is. Amen.